All right, boys. Let's not fucking mince any words here. All right, let's not meander. You know why we're here. I'm going to talk to you about Evil Dead Burn. And I'm going to come into this review as balanced as I can. All right, fair and balanced. Because I feel like, having read some of the reviews post-watching it, there is a lot of hyperbole, exaggeration, and a lot of... would it be bias? I don't know. There's a word that I'm thinking of, and it's just lingering over me like a floating deadite. Nonetheless, I think that I'm going to go into this as measured as I can, because this movie has so much that I want to praise, an exceeding amount of things that I want to praise, and there are quite a few things that it misses out on. But I will tell you this, right out the bat, this is a great horror movie. This is a great fucking horror movie. It's fun as hell. But as a Evil Dead film, it's lacking a few essentials that I will get into. So the story follows Alice, a woman who is grieving her husband after he dies in a car accident. And so she must face her husband's family during the funeral. And of course, well, you know, during tragedy, people's real versions come out, and turns out they're not very nice people. But of course, somewhere, somehow, the magic words, the four of them, are uttered, and madness ensues. The whole movie takes place in a beautiful, beautiful mansion. Quite haunting. Looks like moldy ass in the inside, but nonetheless, part of the set dressing. But the house inside and out looks absolutely beautiful. What Sebastian has created here, in terms of cinematography, is something that I think is the new standard in terms of how you compose a sequence in horror. And I don't say that lightly. There are some shots in here and there are some transitions in here that just feel incredibly ingenuitive, in terms of Sam Raimi, you know, his magnum opus being Evil Dead 2, in terms of creativity and camera dynamicism, blocking, composition. Like, Sebastian goes out of his way to create something where he practices the same level of creativity and freedom without taking from Sam Raimi. There are some shots and transitions here that you see in the trailer that are really brilliant, particularly a scene with a mirror. And I'll try to paint this picture for you without sounding too confused, but there is a sequence in the trailer where you see Alice being thrown against a mirror by one of the Deadites, the old lady, and the camera is tracking her from one side, and as her face smashes into the mirror, of course, it darkens the screen, and as we pull back, it's as if we've transitioned through the reflection and turned, and now are like trucking backwards from her head. And it was so fluid, but it basically paints the idea that we just transitioned into the other side of the reflection and are picking up from that action sequence from another angle. And my mouth dropped when that happened. I was like, that's really good. There's also another great scene that you see in the trailer, which is a one take. It was half of that scene was put in a teaser, which I really, really just... there was no reason that teaser should have been that scene, because it is about 60% of the actual sequence, and I wish they would have been left alone. But nonetheless, that sequence is a standout and one of the best, I think, in the Evil Dead franchise. It truly does depict the chaos that comes with a Deadite and their ravenous need to create chaos and just fuck with people because they're just mean little kids that are born in hell. The movie is shot in doom and gloom. It is very gray, very dark hues of blue. It's a very cold looking movie, and in a lot of ways it helps really sort of push the point across that everything is dire and dark and depressing and doomed. Aesthetically, this movie isn't lacking in that sentiment at all. The cinematography takes advantage of that. playing with claustrophobic elements of the house. We have a set piece that takes place in the bathroom, which is extensive and really well done. We have another sequence that takes place, again, like I mentioned, through the living room. It's a one-shot take that goes through the living room, past a staircase, into another door, into another room. And we have a couple of other sequences in that way, particularly one in the car. The car sequence that you see in the trailer, much longer in the film, and was my standout sequence of the entire movie. I was very surprised how when the camera needed to be still, the camera was still. And when the camera needed to add a little franticness, a little movement, a little dynamicism, it was there too. There's such care put behind every shot, and every transition. There are transitions here that didn't need to be there, but it just adds more character to the way the film is being told. I think the characters here, particularly Alice, our final girl, bounds better than what was in Rise. Absolutely more likable, way more flawed. There is an element to this movie that tries to introduce, I want to say, highbrow exploration of like abuse, which doesn't hit at all, but I will say that it adds this survivor element to her character that does accentuate her wins throughout the film. I thought that was cool. But ultimately, that part of the movie goes fucking nowhere. They do nothing with it. They present her as a victim. The first 30 minutes of the film are pretty much dedicated to that of her grieving her husband and the stuff that she's been through. And when people complain about it being shorter, that's what they mean. I think 20 minutes, 15 minutes could have easily been shaved off of the beginning of this film and started at a very key moment. If you've seen the movie, all I'll say is funeral, maybe dinner scene. That's where we should have started. The opening credits sequence to this movie is actually really great. Like, really great. I know that Rise gets a lot of love for how that movie started with Jessica. I think this one is a little bit more cruel and very creative. And I really enjoyed it. It started out with a bang. Absolutely. Like, the sequence in here rivals the one I think in Rise, in my opinion, just because of, in Rise, you have her smashing a drone in her face, right? And in this one, you have two unsuspecting bystanders just fishing, and fucked up shit happens. I just thought that whole sequence leading up to the title card was really great, and I really enjoyed it. And I think that out of the Deadites in this movie, one in particular, which you've seen in the trailer, the one that is responsible for the dishwasher scene, is truly, truly cruel and fun to watch. She is charming. She has character. I think that she was the closest thing we'll get to the charm that Ellie had from Rise, the mom. I think that the other Deadites were nowhere near as charming, though they had their moments. I think she really stole the show for me. I know a lot of people are talking about the grandma, but she was really comedic relief for the most part, until she wasn't. I won't spoil what happens. This movie has elements of humor that land most of the time, but I do think the humor is uneven. It kind of goes between slapstick and then like it's kind of tone deaf for a little while and then it comes back. I think that the balance wasn't exactly struck, but there are moments of humor that had me chuckling, particularly in the absurdity, but then also something involving the grandma that was just really good. It was really good. The grandma was used sparingly in terms of humor, but she was used really good to bring some levity to the situation. And, to those that forget, like, Evil Dead at the start was about comedy, at least Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness. And they've brought that absurdity back a lot more than any of the other movies. And I think that balanced a little better, it would have hit a lot more for me. But I think for the most part, it did hit. Like, there's some moments out there that I was chuckling. There's one sequence with a mortician that had me cracking the fuck up because of his detachment to his job and still willing to, like, dance and sing while he's just cremating bodies. It was hilarious. I was cracking the fuck up. That shit was beautiful humor. But there's a lot of good humor in here, so there is some levity to be had. Overall, the gore is good, but this is where I get into my negatives. Okay? And remember, it's just my opinion, okay? I think the hype in terms of the violence here is over fucking hyped. This film kind of plays like the greatest hits. Anything you've seen in this film, anything that happens in this film, you've already seen in all the other ones, in one variation or another. This is nothing new that you haven't seen. And I think about 70% of all the good kills have already been spoiled for you in the trailer. There are some extensive sequences in between those moments that are still there to shock and awe. So many things that involve Alice surviving by the skin of her teeth and getting hurt that are pretty gruesome, but in terms of kills, you've seen most of them in the trailer. God damn that fucking trailer. But I think overall there's this extreme hyperbole. It was like, oh my god, this was almost NC-17, in the same way that and this happened with Obsession, right? And I don't like comparing fucking movies to other movies that have no reason being compared, despite it being the same genre. But I will say this. Obsession had a whole thing about it would have been NC-17 if they kept the head slamming against the steering wheel as long as it was before they had to edit it to what we got in picture lock. I guess I understand why that would have been NC-17. It would have just, in my head, it just looks like he just would have kept doing that for another minute. I was like, the scene's already long enough. We don't need that. So I already didn't see why it would have been NC-17. But with this, I don't see it either. I don't see where this film pushes the boundaries that haven't already been pushed by 2013's and Rise, or any of the other films. I genuinely think this sits comfortably between Rise and 2013 in terms of violence. There is nothing here that made me turn away. There is nothing here that I wasn't just smiling at, going like, oh, that's fucking cool, give me more. This movie delivers the goods. It delivers the violence, but whoever the fuck is saying that this shit is, there's a scene where they do something and then you think they're going to stop, but they keep going just to make you uncomfortable. For me, none of it hit that way. I was just smiling ear to ear the same way I was for 2013 and the same way that I was for Rise. It is objectively gorier than Rise. And it sits somewhere pretty in the middle between that and 2013. I think it definitely hits some of the grittiness of 2013. I do think the practical effects here are much better and they're much more detailed. There is one sequence involving a head at the very beginning that was pretty fucking cool, pretty haunting, and I really enjoyed that. Maybe that was it, but again, there's nothing here that I've gone like, oh, this pushes Terrifier levels. A lot of comparisons to Terrifier. My boys, I don't fucking see it. I don't understand it. Maybe because, like Terrifier, we don't give a fuck here. Women, children, men, dogs, you name it, everyone gets it. And I guess, there used to be a time where, like, we would be very careful about murking kids and murking animals on screen. But here, be forewarned, animals get hurt and children get hurt. That is your warning. They do get hurt. They get more than hurt. They get fucked up. So that being said, maybe that's what it is, but nonetheless, there's nothing here that if you haven't seen all the other movies and you can sit through them, that will keep you from sitting through this one. So maybe that's a good thing for you because you're hoping you can get through it. Maybe it's a bad thing for you because you're hoping you can't get through it. You know what I mean? I was definitely hoping this would be the movie that, like, I saw when I was walking out of the theater, I saw puke on the floor, and I was totally hoping that it was from someone watching Evil Dead Burn. Granted, it probably was, but that person just probably doesn't watch as many horror movies as we do. So it's definitely not extreme, considering everything we're already used to in the Evil Dead franchise. So taper your expectations when it comes to the gore. Taper your expectations when it comes to the deaths. And you sit somewhere in the middle of Rise in 2013 and you will be fucking okay. The deaths here are guttural. They are visceral. They are great. Another one of my complaints is that there are some omissions here to the grand lore, things we expect to see in an Evil Dead movie that we really don't see. Necronomicon doesn't really get any screen time in this film. Like, omitted, really. How this goes about, I will not tell you here, but it doesn't really involve the book. And that was just kind of like, it's an Evil Dead movie. The Necronomicon is like as essential as Ash was at one point. Now we don't have Ash, but we have the Necronomicon. You gotta show that fucker. And unfortunately here, it was omitted. How it all goes about is pretty interesting, and it is cool. I like the twist, but still, we need the Necronomicon just for me. Fuck it. Maybe I'm the only person on the planet that gives a fuck, but considering that every movie has had the Necronomicon on screen and it's being a bit point, like in 2013, the shit's bound and barbed wire in a plastic black bag, and it's a whole thing, you know, the way that it's even composed in the scene with the double-barreled shotgun on the desk, the shells here, and then the Necronomicon wrapped in plastic right in between that. It's a big moment, you know, for the film, and the way that we find the other Necronomicon book in Rise in the bank, and how we build up to that, like all that stuff is kind of essential to the buildup. I think like if taking it out was a whole point of trying to make it feel a little bit different, I think that's one of those things you don't omit. Everything else, sure, but not that. I'm assuming it has to do further with the continuity of Rise and what we're going to do moving forward. This is very much connected. This connects everything, but not as much as you think. This is not as Easter egg heavy as you believe. Now, if you're like me, you'll catch like, oh, that weapon that they're using was used by a certain character in 2013 to cut off her arm. Wow, how cool. Or you'll be like, oh, that Jeep, that looks exactly like Mia's Jeep. Same color, same Jeep, same top. Like, oh, that's cool. Doesn't really go anywhere, but there are Easter eggs. They're there for your viewing pleasure. If you're a fucking nerd like I am, you want to point that stuff out, it's definitely there. We do get some extra lore drop here. We are introduced to an item that is very much introduced in old films. I'm not going to tell you what, but you probably already know. There's probably something you've been wondering, is it ever going to come back? It does. It comes back. I would have wished it played a larger role. It does. It comes back, and it is the whole reason the Deadites are here to fuck with this family. Which does make it kind of twisty, because it's not just simply like, hey, we're here because you summoned us. No, things happened because they are looking for something, and I thought that was cool. There's another element of lore that is implemented in this movie that is only mentioned twice, 3 times. Maybe 4 in passing, but it's clearly something they're planning on touching on in the next films. I'm assuming Wrath might touch some of this, considering that what they're talking about in this film, that specific piece of lore, kind of makes sense in the era in which the next movie takes place. Kind of. And so I can see that being set up for Wrath. So I'm not a big fan of introducing threads that won't be wrapped up until a movie that doesn't come out till 2028, even though it was already shot and finished and wrapped. But nonetheless, it is there for you to do with what you will. The Deadites here were a bit of a letdown, minus the girlfriend, Joseph's girlfriend, the dishwasher girl from the that sounds sexist, but I swear I just call her that because she like used a dishwasher to fuck him up. But besides that, I know that some people feel that it's not, Deadites don't have to be playful, but considering that every Deadite from the original to Ellie have been pretty playful, even Mia was pretty playful, I feel like there's a lack of playfulness in these, like there's just not enough pushing boundaries. I wish that they would push boundaries to a disgusting level. These Deadites are the most fiendish, fucked up entities in all of Everness. I do wish they did some more fucked up shit to fuck with them, aside of just like trying to physically hurt them. I even think like their vulgar language. You know how Mia in 2013 was talking to her brother? She was like, "Let me suck that cock, pretty boy." Or she tells her brother like, "Your sister's being raped in hell," like shit like that, right? Like the cruelty, the vile fucking mouths of these pitch-tongued fuckers. Like that's what I want. I feel like they played it a little safe with the Deadites here. and maybe I'm the only one that feels this way, but I genuinely feel they played it a little safe, especially with like Ellie in the last movie, just being such a bitch to her kids. You know, like she's in the peephole on the other side pretending that her husband is there trying to talk to her kids so her kids could like let her inside, talking degrading shit about how she wished she never had them and would cut them out of her belly if she could, like shit like that. It's fucking vile. And I just feel like they played it a little safe here. There's a little safeness that I didn't particularly like here. Nonetheless, the Deadites, at least one of them, is extremely fun and vile, and I really liked her. The last act is a downfall for me. The last 10 minutes really bothered me. Okay? Every Evil Dead film ends pretty extravagantly with at least the newer ones, right? We have Evil Dead 2 ended with the evil tree, of course. And then we have Army of Darkness with Evil Ash and the Army of Darkness. Then we have Evil Mia in Evil Dead 2013. Then we have the mangled mess of Ellie conjoined with her like other two kids and them walking around looking all spidery and shit. It was done really well. With everything's done with practical work, and I loved it, especially the last two really emphasized like let's bring back the practicality of the originals. Everything in this movie practically is beautiful. It's done well. It's very well crafted. It's in the last 10 minutes that they said, well, we did such a good job. I think it's time we fuck it up. And then we get this entity, this demon of the month, right? That is partly CG. You see it in the trailer, but when you see it better, it looks like decent CG. But nonetheless, it was CG that took me out because I'm not used to seeing the final boss be something that isn't done practically. Evil Mia was like a skinny, creepy, nasty thing. And then obviously the mangled mess in Rise was practical effects in a suit with two holes so that the kids could put their heads through it and look like they're all conjoined. All that stuff worked. Practical effects galore. And in this film, we do not have that. We have something that just doesn't look intimidating and is CG heavy. And to me, that feels antithetical to what I expect. And maybe it's my fault for having expectations. Forgive me. 6 movies in, can you blame me? But it feels kind of like having the Necronomicon in every movie. At the end of every Evil Dead, I always look forward to the demon, the thing, the final encounter, the final boss. And I was very disappointed with this. This is probably the weakest 10 minutes, which is a shame because the last hour of this movie is bad shit nuts. And it does keep you on the edge of the tip of your dick. But having that high bar and then suddenly stepping over it and falling 50 feet down to your face because it's CG. And then they also try to connect it to something emotional that just felt out of touch with Evil Dead. Listen, I'm all about trying something new. I absolutely am. But I feel like if you're going to touch on heavy subjects and then you're going to have an hour and 15 minutes of pure in-your-face chaotic, bloody, mangling mess of sequences that just kick ass and you're just getting your audience completely entranced by what's happening, but you presented something that was deep at the beginning and then you only use your last 10 minutes to close off that emotional arc, you're not doing shit, and you shouldn't have done it in the first place. Just, that's it. At least with Mia, the whole detox thing, the friends going to the cabin to detox her, that made sense because it was really used as a plot device for her to for her friends not to believe her when she like said she saw something in the woods, right? They think she's just trying to leave the cabin, and so they think that she'll say anything, and she has been seeing demons. The fucking trees are doing things. There are evil Mias out there in the swamps fucking with her. Like, things are happening, and we know that she's seeing them and she's not lying. But the element of her detoxing, that part of the story, makes her untrustworthy to her friends, therefore keeps them in the cabin and circumvents the whole like, why don't they just leave thing, right? Clever, but it wasn't supposed to be like a whole story arc, right? Here, they're clearly going for something highbrow, and it just felt off. for me. I think that some of the safeness, the lack of playful Deadites really makes it, and the lack of the Necronomicon makes this feel less of an Evil Dead film and more of a kinetic, just overall horror film. So it doesn't feel like an Evil Dead film sometimes. But then as a horror film, it still just fucking rocks. Like, it bangs, dude. Like, it genuinely rocks. But as an Evil Dead movie, it's lacking a few things. So I'm on the tape. If you're going in this because you're an Evil Dead fan like I am, taper your expectations, because there are some things here that I feel are lacking. Very much so. But if you're going in as just a horror fan who just wants to see pure, violent, visceral escapism on the screen with no expectations, no hyperbole, there is a lot to enjoy here. I'm going to be watching this a couple more times. I will be getting it on Blu-ray. Where this sits for me is probably just below Rise and above everything else. Meaning Rise is still my least favorite. This is below it, and the order for me still stays the same. That is to say, there is still not a bad movie in the Evil Dead franchise, but I think after this, and after, by the way, there are 2 post-credit scenes. After this, I do think that Wrath needs to bring something unique to the table, and moving forward, we either need to bring this home in one final big conclusion, or we need to deviate from the formula in a way that feels organic, without omitting the things that make Evil Dead Evil Dead. Bring the Necronomicon back. That hurt me a little, like just a little. And I know that it's kind of contrarian to go like, do something different, but also, why didn't you do the same things in this one? And like I said, I think there are certain Evil Dead elements that should always exist to keep this thing firmly footed in Evil Dead territory. Everything around those things, you differentiate. You make a little different. You spice the fuck up. That's why I think Wrath is really exciting for me, because not only are we jumping back in time, but we're shooting it like a 70s film, which means we might touch on some of those like late 70s, early 80s special effects and kind of get clever with it. But also, based on some of the lore that's been dropped here in this movie, we might actually have an interesting case for what could be one of the more unique, different, interesting, yet deeply Evil Dead rooted movies in the franchise. My hopes are astronomically high. I still don't know why they're waiting till 2028 when it's already been shot, and they don't need a full fucking year and a half to edit this movie. So, still confused. But nonetheless, go out and watch this movie, make an opinion for yourself, but taper those expectations. I really did enjoy this movie, and I will be watching it again. As a fan of horror, not so much as a fan of the Evil Dead. Because again, as a fan of the Evil Dead, this omitted a lot of things. And it's not a perfect movie. But there is enough here to watch, again, with a big audience who is into it. And I had a lot of fun. So, while it kind of keeps the trend of Rise, where it's like probably a divisive movie, this one I definitely love more than Rise, for sure. Evil Dead 2 and Evil Dead 2013 still reign supreme for me. I'm a flawed man, what can I say? Anyway, thank you guys for listening to this review. I know this was a big one. This was kind of an important one for us horror nerds, so here we are. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for watching. I have more reviews coming down the pipeline. There's a new Shudder movie coming out tomorrow that I definitely will be checking out with Ronald Weasley from Harry Potter. That was horrible. I'm so sorry. That comes out today, and I will be checking that out. Hopefully it's good. I've started a new horror series. I won't tell you which one that is until I decide to record and review. And it's not a horror movie, but Spider-Man is the next big one, and I am extremely fucking excited. Anyway, guys, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you for spending such a long time with me in this video, because I'm sure it's going to be a long one even after I edited it down. So thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. And as always, I will see you at the movies.